I'm going to go ahead and call this work session to order on assembly process for Midtown Community Council's request for hearing on Mom and Pop's liquor license number 3219, 2020-2021 renewal. Let's start with introduction, starting on this side.
Pete Peterson.
Crystal Kennedy. Thanks, Allentown.
Forrest Dunbar.
Susie on the France.
Felix Rivera.
Andy Honest, Clerk's Office.
Okay.
And I'm on the phone, Mr. Chair, Austin Davidson.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Quinn Davidson. So, I just want to put into the record a few things. So, Assembly members will have noted if they've been checking their email that we got an email at 10:26 from the representative of Mom and Pop's asking to reschedule. Asking to reschedule due to being sick and having a bad fever. At which point I emailed Eddie at 10:31 asking if he could call into the meeting. At 10:34, Eddie stated that he has a really bad cough and cannot talk. At 10:37, I emailed him back and asked if at least he could listen into the discussion, and informed him that we would have another work session to allow him to respond. At which point, he has not responded to that either. So, because we do have a variety of folks who are here today and are ready to present, I do want to at least get through that, and then we will have a second work session in coordination with Eddie when he is able to attend. Looks like I have a little bit to read here. So this work session is in anticipation of an application for the renewal of a liquor license. The process to review these items is different than the Assembly's legislative role. The Assembly may in its administrative or quasi-judicial role, review and protest with facts and findings liquor license applications. This process requires the Assembly to be impartial and make a decision based only on the record before it and testimony today. Please remember there is an exception in code that ex parte prohibition does not apply in liquor license proceedings, so members are free to discuss with the applicant and constituents. Although, caveat to that, I think it's still something that members should put onto the record like I just did. The municipal code requires the clerk's office to send notice to all community councils on or before September 1st of each year, notifying them of the licenses which are anticipated to renew. If the community council would like to request a public hearing on a renewal, the council must submit a request for a public hearing no later than October 15th of that year. The Midtown Community Council submitted a timely request to the clerk's office on October 15th, requesting a public hearing on the renewal of Mom and Pop's license number 3219. The public hearing will be scheduled as soon as deemed complete renewal application for Mom and Pop's has been received from the state. This work session is intended to update the members and direct staff on potential actions the Assembly may intend to take on this license prior to receiving the renewal application and being put on a 60-day deadline to protest. The Assembly members may ask questions of the staff, applicants, or other persons, but have that opportunity also at the public hearing. The Midtown Community Council also submitted a resolution regarding the renewal. You will see the resolution in the materials provided. So first, also want to note onto the record, it's the first item in the packet, a letter that, apologies, I didn't date it, but it was delivered on Monday. A letter delivered on Monday regarding this in conjunction and communication with the Midtown Community Council. This was one of their suggestions to inform the neighbors. And we did receive, I think, one email and potentially other communications based off of this letter, so that did go out. And the applicants also got that letter as well. Next, we have a variety of different emails and communications. So let's go ahead and just start from the top of the pack. Our first letter is by Doug Lampkin. So Doug, if you want to introduce yourself for the record, if you want to speak to this.
Doug Lampkin, I'm the Director of Facilities for NeighborWorks Alaska. One of our properties is located directly behind the strip mall on West 36th and directly impacted by the irresponsible marketing of alcohol from mom and pops.
Sure. Mr. Constant?
So, in one of these letters here, it's in this purple packet, you state, or somebody from your organization states that, it's not signed, on our behalf, open the complaint stating that the operator is selling alcohol to intoxicating individuals and not checking IDs. What evidence did you provide, or is there evidence that they're actually selling without checking IDs?
Is that the letter addressed to Eddie?
Yeah, probably. It's in the purple packet here.
And I apologize for this disjointed packet, really. It was just gonna be a letter, and then I decided maybe you guys wanted to see, some other things, an outline, a timeline of things that we have done. I believe that Jim McKenzie, which couldn't be here, actually secret shop mom and pops. My former boss, Michelle Sasan and Kim, it was on their radar that we were having, problems. And notably, I mean, we noticed it from a few different angles. The visual angle of, all the debris and the vomit and that sort of thing that comes about with that behavior. But it was also the escalating vacancy rate on the property that pretty much remained fully rented. So in an effort to try to figure a solution of the problem, they went in there, they tried to have a dialogue with the owner, and that's just simply a letter from that time period. But it never, I don't even think the letter ever got presented, and I certainly know we never had any conversation with Eddie.
And more so, I'm interested to understand what the nature of the evidence is. For me, it's hard unless you have very concrete lines between the operator and the activity
Right.
that is a problem to make the determination that was done in particular.
Would you like some affidavits from community council members and even possibly one assembly member that I'm aware of may have gone in and purchased to make a determination if they were following the rules and if they asked for IDs?
Yeah, I don't know
made
that.
multiple purchases with no checking of the ID.
Yeah, I don't know that I need that. I just need to understand the nature of the claims that are being made.
Yeah, and let me be clear, I'm not trying to abolish liquor stores. I certainly don't want to affect somebody's right to, have a free and open market. All we're trying to do is protect our residents, our children, and our property that seems to be, the stopping point after they go into his store. It was first, if you read the letter I sent to Phoenix, that kind of gives you an outline since I've been employed with NeighborWorks. And the first thing, and I don't have a testimonial from this particular person, he just told me he went in there in 2012, wanted to buy a soda, and they were trying to get him to buy the other products. So that's when it kind of became apparent as to what was going on. All I've given you, Chris, is just random pictures over the years that we've taken of the utility box and some of the traffic that kind of goes through that particular alley, and then kind of giving you what deterrents that we have put in place. We were working with Peggy Robinson at one point in time in 2017, but we couldn't get any action from Mr. Trainee at the time. So we felt like if we can't solve that problem, we would just have to start putting up fences and barriers and other things to protect our property and our residents.
Thank you. Ms. Alatel?
Thank you. Can you just provide a tiny bit of background about what the Mallory is?
It's in there in the second paragraph.
Great.
So the Mallory was built back in the 70s. It's 111 units. It's 5 buildings. It's a really nice campus. Has a playground. It's a school bus stop. The Mallory has 206 residents, and 46 of them are children. It's also part of our, we do hard to house at NeighborWorks. We do other programs at NeighborWorks. It does come, we do have some HUD voucher and Alaska Housing voucher recipients at that property as well.
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
More of an internal question. Have we any information that the CAP team has been looking closely at this operation?
We may be able to provide you that. Jim McKenzie was the one that was trying to get that information. We did do a walk around with the CAP team over there in 2017, 2018. And we do have calls for them, but I don't have that information handy today, Chris.
Right.
Sorry.
In one previous action that Mr. Potter, of course, is well aware of, the crux of getting the AMCO board, ABC at the time, was the really clear records that established the facts that were included from EPD videos, documentary testimonials. And so it'll be hard, I think, first to make that case, second to win that case with the body that actually has the power to do something without a real clear record. So we may want to engage with the CAP team to do their own, more subtle investigations too.
Thank you. All right, any other questions for Mr. Lamkin? Yes, Ms. Kennedy.
Just a question, just in terms of locations. Also, the In-N-Out liquor store is in this area, and where?
It is. It's south, and it's across the street on Arctic Boulevard. So that would be
The southeast corner of Arctic and 36.
Around, okay, all right. Thank you, sorry. No. Okay, so it's a small house. So if this was the street here, it would be over here, right? Oh, right here, okay. Because this is the back side of Modern House. This is the front.
So that'd be 36 runs through here, Fair Street, and next. So Spinard's and Arctic's next street over. So it's a couple blocks away.
And can I ask
Sure.
one more question there too? If neither of these two liquor stores were here, hypothetically, where would be the next place to purchase? The next nearest location?
I would say that it's either but closer would be Fireweed, Brown Jug on Fireweed, up near the schools, and let's see, Captain, there's one on Benson,
yeah.
that's
Over by the pawn shop.
Captain Morgan or something like that, Captain something. And they have recently entered into a memorandum. They've recently entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Spinard Community Council. The Brown Jug on Fireweed is in North Star's boundary, and I've been having discussions with Brown Jug, as you'll see in some of the next actions that will be taken up. There'll be improvements on that, but I believe. But Walmart is also a local area, but they don't sell shooters.
That was going to be my other question. Do they sell the same type of products? The other stores?
Most of them do, package differently, price differently, but Walmart a number of years ago stopped selling shooters because they were having so many problems. There'll be more because that license is coming up as well. We've got a separate package, so you'll hear from me again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. LaFrance?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a question about some of the photos. I see the one where there are folks congregating outside of the apartment building.
That's in one of our stairwells.
Okay, so people go in the stairwell who don't live there?
Correct.
Okay, and then there are photos from inside units?
That was a unit that was broke into, and there were people living in it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, back in 2017, when we joined the community council, trying to work with the Midtown Community Council, we really thought we would get some traction, but we quit really even pursuing this. So there again, I apologize for not having maybe as detailed documentation as I should, and I probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Tim Potter and Felix Rivera asking for us to come and speak pumping out for NeighborWorks. So I do apologize for that.
Well, actually, as I'm looking through your narrative, it explains some of the photos and references them, so thanks.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, this is Tim Potter, and I wanted Doug, before he's done, to be able to talk about the amount of money that NeighborWorks has spent in the very recent past doing upgrades to their landscaping, fencing, and securing the laundry rooms and that. So if you can imagine an entity that is trying to give good housing at a good price to a variety of folks, including children in the town, and they have to expend a lot of money to try and make it a decent living environment. It's important because that is one of the tests for the commission.
So, NeighborWorks is a nonprofit, or as I like to say, a for-purpose organization. We specialize in affordable housing. We fill that niche that maybe Cook Inlet and some of the other housing providers don't fill. I oversee almost 1,000 apartments. I have 10 campuses throughout the municipality. So, but this one is the one that we really get the most impact from. But when we have to move limited funds, because we don't rent at full market prices, we have to move those funds into putting up deterrents on a property that's 50 years old that really needs kitchen upgrades, new playgrounds, better laundry facilities. It's difficult. It's difficult for us to do that. But we have to do it to maintain our low vacancy rate. We typically operate around, at that time, we were operating around 1% vacancy rate, which is unheard of in the rental market. We got up to almost 9% over the course of my tenure here at NeighborWorks, and that's when we started putting in these deterrents. I had to put bars on the windows. I put acoustical sealant on the utility boxes so they wouldn't sit there. Then, we got the strip mall and some of the other malls around there. I went around to them, introduced myself, tried to get some kind of community involvement into what the problem was. The strip mall, they fenced off all their utility boxes, so that gave me the idea, well, let's get rid of the utility boxes, take that out of play. Let's get rid of the landscaping on the Bering Street side so the residents can see through there and see what's going on out there in the street. The end result is, we finished the fence project last year. Right now, it's spent almost $100,000 a date. And that's not including the police involvement, that's not including property damage, it's not including janitorial or resident managers or my maintenance time. My maintenance staff over there spends about 10% of his time now policing the property instead of serving our residents. We're not in the police business, but we have to move them on. They're just, we have to protect, the people that live there. So,
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
Yeah, so are you experiencing 1 or 2% vacancy at your other properties right now?
We have different properties with different missions. So the LUSAC is probably the highest vacancy rate. That's the one that services people with extremely low incomes. The Adelaide, it has a waiting list that has really no vacancy rate. That's for people that are homeless. The biggest property on Government Hill is more summer workers that come in, railroad, Princess Cruises, that sort of thing. Our vacancy rate right now, Chris, is right around 4% throughout our whole portfolio.
Yeah, because obviously the homeless ones are the subsidized, right? You got vouchers coming to support those people, they're not paying for themselves. So that full vacancy or full occupancy makes sense. I am hearing a lot about, generally speaking, there's lots of vacancy in the rental markets across town right now. So I don't know that you could lay at mom and pops the vacancy issues here. And I don't know if you know who Daniel George is. He's staff member to Don Young. Their office is right there. And he sent me pictures of people actively shooting heroin right on your back door.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so
There's a picture of needles and everything.
yeah, the problems are.
Oh, this is citywide.
It's not.
And it's
it is in
complex.
lots of areas, but it's around certain uses. The alcohol, the low-income housing, the opportunities for places for people to be where they are. You know, they've already bombed out of everywhere else. So it's a real challenge. The nature and complexity of these problems.
Yeah, we did try to go back and pull up vacancy rates for the Mallory over a 5-year period of time. All I can tell you is I don't have that. We weren't really successful in getting that information.
In 2015, Anchorage citywide had a 2% vacancy or less, and since the recession, 10%.
Our vacancy rates actually dropped since the recession. The problem, we couldn't keep, it was building 5 was really the worst part of the situation. And once I fenced off the utility box and took the bushes out of play, people were able to live in there without listening to what was going on that street corner.
Which one is building 5?
That's the one on Bering Street. That'll be, if you're looking at the picture, it should be on the right-hand side.
Southwest building in the complex.
Yeah, that's literally the one right next to where the heroin.
This one, no, I'm sorry, it's right here. So the utility box is right there. This building was really hard to keep anybody residing in that building. Over here wasn't really that bad. But once we took the utility box out of the way, that was $2,600. And, it was nice of L&D to let us do that. Then they didn't have a place to congregate, because that was okay. Then they ended up over at the Korean church.
All right. So I think we have time for a few more questions before we move on to the next presenter here. Ms. Olatel?
Are we gonna have Mr. Potter present separately? Because I guess all my questions are for him.
Yeah.
Specifically. Okay, then I will wait.
Okay. Mr. Dunbar?
Yeah, I think mine are two first, but I'd like to ask them now to sort of hopefully direct his presentation a little bit.
Sure.
For Mr. Potter or for others. So I'm reading through this resolution. I'm trying to remember because there's this and there's also in and out liquor, and I try to keep the two straight in my head, and sometimes I inflate what we did over the last several years. So we passed an AR in 2018 here regarding mom and pops, right? And we made certain requests of the Alcohol Control Board, and they did or did not impose those requirements.
They did.
They did.
Okay, so that was becoming my question, because there's a lot of documentation here that they are violating these requirements, and I'm making sure the requirements that are actually on the license versus some kind of MOU or something that we asked them to be on there. These are on the license; they have been violating them. That's your assertion?
That is my assertion, and it's also my assertion that with absolute respect and disrespect at the same time to the license and AMCO, if part of my presentation and part of my packet is the code requirements within the city of Anchorage municipality, what your obligation and your responsibilities are through the conditional use process and any venue that is going to sell liquor. It's a special use permit, and it forwards it back through the general permit requirements and review and approval. So it's my opinion that irregardless of what the ABC board or AMCO wants to do, that if you withdraw your approval and deny a conditional use for the sale of alcohol, that's it. That's your law. You have the power to do that.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Lampkin. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Potter. You have a lot of information here, so if you could just give us the highlights and what you think we need to know.
The highlights, there's basically a couple of pieces in this. The last part is the August material that was submitted for the last work session that you had. But it's still very relevant because it provides a pretty good track record of purchases that are not consistent with the conditional use, the MOU, or the license limitations. Since the August time period, the remainder of the material, starting at the front, is just a reassertion that there are a significant number of those standards and requirements that they have flagrantly been not complying with. I've also attached sections 2103.040, which is alcohol sales, and then that refers you to 2103.080D, which is the conditional use standards for approval. They are both relevant and tied to the sale of liquor in this city. So you really need to look at that, because a big part of our contention is that the bottom line test of being able to be made compatible with the surrounding uses and properties is really the underlying big test for the issuance of the conditional use. The community council has attempted to work with Mr. Lee from the renewal that was done 2 years ago, and after about 4 or 6 months, he became non-associated with the community council, stopped coming to meetings, had every excuse in the book. We started to suggest that he show up. I would make routine stops at the store to check in and see how he was doing, and or make purchases that I could keep a record of, and take photos around the property. Probably the most significant thing is once you get past the first 2-page letter and look at this photo. This shows you the area in red crosshatch. That is where I personally went out and picked up trash. Alcohol, I didn't pick up everything. I didn't pick up any big gulps, but I did pick up everything associated with alcohol, litter, and debris. And if you turn the next page, that is from November 9th. I hope you would think of yourself living in one of Doug's units and have your kids have to walk by this and other things every day of the week. It's ridiculous. It's all over the place. And much of this is in the locations that we have a requirement to go out and police, at least on a weekly basis, and retain that material to show it to the community council so we could judge if it was getting better or not. The next photo is just a blow-up to show you that between the two photos you can get the idea that there is a significant trend here in that shooters are a problem, and anywhere from about 55% to 70+% of the liquor stores that I've been collecting materials from that are coming up from renewals are shooters. Many of them sold at 99 cents a piece. The other is fortified beer, primarily the brand Steel Reserve.
I have a question for you, Mr. Potter. Mr. Dunbar?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Potter, like I said, we previously talked about In-N-Out Liquor. Looking at the map now, it's very close to this location, correct? So, did we successfully get In-N-Out to start labeling their stuff?
Did not. At the time that we were in that process, the owner had a significant health occurrence. He is still in a nursing care facility. His daughter left college in Pennsylvania and came back to help her mom. We showed up at the assembly hearing for the renewal. Well, it was actually a transfer, and they transferred the liquor license from the father to the daughter, and they have been actively attempting to sell their lease out and their license. They don't want to be in the business anymore. The daughter is fearful for her mother's safety because of what they also get hit with over there.
So, I mean, the obvious follow-up there, right, is how do you know that things you're collecting are from this liquor store as opposed to the other liquor store right across the street?
That's an excellent point, and that's why he was supposed to be marking every shooter and single beer that he sold.
And he did.
But by observation,
Yeah.
it's become very relevant that, and you use Walmart in Midtown as the example, around that entire huge super block, I found 9 shooters, and they were all associated with bus stops. They don't sell shooters there. Now you go to another location that does sell 99 cents or $1.50 shooters, and there's 103. Now, can I say that they all came from Mr. Lee's place? No. That was the whole point for having the markings.
Right.
In the discussions that we're having with Brown Jug and Car Safeway, as part of theirs, they want to monitor the situation because they're now going to implement some additional policing activities. And if there's still an issue with litter and debris that are alcohol related, the discussion and additions to our MOUs that include marking of the bottles will come up. Have I watched people dump them? Absolutely. I sit in the parking lot, I sit across the street, and I'll tell you, a year and a half when I retire, it's going to be a whole different story. You people are going to be sick and tired of seeing me. Now, I'm not a prohibitionist, but this kind of activity is unacceptable in this community. And the impacts just to Doug's property of over $100,000, that money could have been spent on real, true life upgrades. To walk in and only Eddie Lee would ask me for my ID when I would go in and buy from him. Yeah. His father and his other associates and employees would not. Brown Jug tags me if I go in and buy a candy bar. They'll ask for your ID, which I think is exceptional, and I always say thank you.
I have another question for you, Mr. Potter. Ms. Alatal.
Okay, yeah, I have some questions. I kind of want to go through the license conditions particularly, and one other question after that. So I went and I compared, Mandy just passed out the state license and compared them against the resolution, and they match up. So 1 for 1. So after the condition on the license that you guys execute a memorandum of understanding, that's the May 2018 memorandum of understanding? Do I have that right?
Yes.
Okay. And has that memorandum of understanding been revisited at all since it was executed?
It was executed, and our reporting both in August and today are that he has basically violated every one of the limitations that we agreed to. Now, that's a non-binding MOU, but your conditional use, which included that, is binding, in my opinion.
Okay, I have some follow-up questions.
Okay.
So what efforts have the Midtown Community Council made under the MOU to address these concerns with the owner of Montauk's? And I don't need everything, just kind of an overview.
I have talked to Eddie multiple times. I reached out to the attorney that represented him during the first renewal process back in 2018, and he's no longer represented by that council. There's a storyline there, but I'm not going to get into it. So I don't know if he's represented by council now or not. You heard his words at the August work session. He didn't understand, he wasn't aware. Yes, he was making different pricing for different people, and multiple pictures in that package, including all the way to December 18th. Shows that he's not in compliance with the sale.
So after that August meeting where he was in attendance, and he said he didn't understand, was there any efforts by the Midtown Community Council to help him understand the provisions of the MOU? Did you guys meet or discuss any further after that? Were attempts made?
He had every possibility to come to our regularly scheduled meetings. He knows when they are. After the work session, I had one discussion. There has been no other outreach by us because he continued to violate, and he personally lied to me.
And I want to be clear, I don't think, has Eddie ever said that he doesn't understand the conditions?
When he was asked by you and Weddleton at the August work session, Weddleton asked if he'd been represented by counsel. And didn't the council indicate what in fact those limitations were all about? And he said, well, I don't think I understood. All I can tell you is that he's out of compliance. He continues to be out of compliance. He has lied to community council members, myself, and I'll be more than happy to sign whatever you want me to sign as far as an affidavit. He would go outside and walk with me, and we'd look at some of the shooters laying all over the place, and he'd say, see, it doesn't have my mark on it. Doesn't have my mark on it. Always saying that he was putting marks on it.
Actually, that leads me to another question, if I may. Have you looked at his inventory in the store or aware of anyone to see if they had marks on them in the store?
No, they were, and the method that was agreed to was that he would keep a permanent ink marker, a Sharpie, and at the point in time of sale, that mark would be put on it, because that was the least intrusive to his business operation. And you'll see in the package, even as late as December 18th, a purchase of 3 shooters in violation of his limit of 2 per person per day were purchased for $1.50, not $1.70, and there are no marks evident on the bottle.
Now I have a question for Dean, if I may. So one of the requests is to extinguish the current conditional use permit for the license. How does that differ from the protest of the alcohol license, and what's that process look like? Or maybe it's for Ms. Honest.
The conditional use permit, it goes to the planning department, and there's different standard for revoking or modifying conditional use permit. It is to the property owner's entitlement and right to use the property in a way that's allowed by our code. So it would be easier, I think, if I looked at the code and then gave you that process. But for the license protests and the was regularly, look at whether they've been violating conditions like the conditional use permit, because they would test this license, they're not following code and so forth. Yeah, but you need to have grounds for that. You've got to have evidence that can't be just sort of arbitrary speculative, and I think Mr. Potter's been bringing forward some evidence that's more specific, but you still need to make sure that you can pass the standard of not being arbitrary and reasonable and capricious. And in case law that I've researched in the past, cases that have gone to court on that have looked at documented violations and that have been prosecuted, like citations or even misdemeanors and stuff like that. So I don't know if that really answers your question very well, but the conditional use permit process, you want to look at modifying or revoking that, we need to start with the application to the planning department and then bring that up and the grounds for doing so. This is sort of my off-the-cuff response, but they are very different. Conditional use process is entirely municipalities and nothing to do with the ABC board, but once that's revoked, then their license can't operate there, we violate our code.
May we get a copy of the conditional use permit for this? I don't see it in my documents. I'd like to take a look at it.
Do you want me to get it to you after this?
Yeah, or email or whatever, so I can just review it in the context of the process. So I have the full picture. That'd be great.
And I would appreciate it if all of the assembly members here.
Along with that document, I'll send you the code provisions.
Okay.
I just want to ask that all the assembly members read both of these sections taken directly from your code on 2103, 040, and 080G. And I think it becomes pretty clear that this is an entitlement that the assembly grants to this operator and property. The ABC board grants another license, but without this entitlement, I don't believe they can utilize their license. And I think that's a pretty important distinction.
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
Yeah, thanks. I think it would be wise for us to ask our own compliance team to go do some of their own walkthroughs. I would suggest if you talk to them to make it so they aren't citing them for what they see, but they're recording what they see, so they can do it multiple times without inspiring the notion that they're being monitored. And in so doing, we can create a formalized record internally of what they witnessed and have that to help us establish facts beyond the testimony.
Thank you.
Mr. Constant, in just a comment, he was also to install a camera on the back of the building, which he has not done, claiming that he was having issues with the landlord, and I don't know if that's true.
Well, I would suggest though
But
that we tie
supposedly-
tightly to this right
Yes,
here.
but he has cameras in the facility of which the community council is supposed to be able to review. So if we need to ask for any of that film after we've gone and made purchases, fine.
I
I'll do
think
that
that's
too.
great. That helps to establish a real concrete record of that number 5, the labeling. And so, but that I think would be very helpful to have them take these conditions that were laid on them and just a couple times go through and tell us what they see.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar?
Thank you. For Ms. Honest or whomever, can you remind me what our action item is on the 14th of May or the 28th? Is there currently anything before us?
There is not. This work session we scheduled in advance of receiving the deemed complete renewal application is kind of an update to the members and to kind of establish direction to staff as to kind of what to expect to draft for potential documents for the assembly. But we have not received any application from the state yet, so there is no timeline on this yet.
When do we think that will return? And when that comes back, remind me, I'm always confused by alcohol. It's not like marijuana. We won't get the slut back before us automatically, we just get the license, is that right?
Correct.
And I think what Mr. Potter is suggesting is we take action on the slut. Is that what you're saying? Because we have absolute control over it.
Yes.
Yeah, special interest.
Yes.
What used to be called conditional use permit. So, what? Yeah. Okay. What is the mechanism for bringing the slut back before us at the same time we bring back the license?
An assembly request to the planning department would be an initiating factor. And then, as Dean said, there would need to be the process under the conditional use revocation that would need to be followed, but it's initiated by assembly request.
And just again, what's the ballpark you think we're going to think from the state?
The deadline to get renewals before they expire licenses is February 28th of this year. After that, they would expire the license. They have in the past done extensions on it and allowed them to do a late renewal, but typically we get the renewal applications up through February.
Thank you. Ms. Alatel?
Thanks. So what is the enforcement mechanism? Is it code enforcement for purposes of the conditions? And then if so, if that's the right mechanism, has anyone called code enforcement about
No.
violations?
No. Because this is a little bit odd that typically conditional use is in our code is handled by planning and zoning.
Call planning
The
and zoning?
assembly, because it has alcohol related to it, is the authority in the acting body.
Mr. Gates?
Normally, the planning and zoning context, it's the code enforcement officer's job first. And I don't know how often they do.
They don't do routine. It's typically complaint-based, so if they receive a complaint, then they look into
Only
it.
complaint based.
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
Yeah, this is the same thing that I was talking about, that we should ask for a compliance check that would be done in a very sensitive way rather than a very blunt way. I think the same challenge will come up if we were to immediately issue a draft resolution that calls for canceling this special land use or conditional use permit, and that would tell them that we are very close to looking and then they can immediately amend their operation just for the time frame that we're looking at the question. So I would suggest a little patience and allow this process to work, gather some real information before, not real, I'm not saying yours isn't real, but internal information.
This is real, thank you for
I know.
acknowledging that.
Sorry.
I have other things to do in my life than go collect liquor containers.
Mr. Dunbar?
Oh, just because we're this is semantic questions, so we keep going back and forth. So the site, the code site that Mr. Potter gave us was for special land use permit. But I know some of the really old permits are conditional use permits. Is this still a conditional use permit, or is this considered a SLUP?
This is going to be considered a special land use permit at this time because it's not in the downtown area.
Okay.
But at the time that it was approved, it would have been a cup.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not a SLUP, though.
So I just want to confirm, as I don't know.
I called it a conditional use permit if it was issued before the Title 21 rewrite for 2012.
Yeah.
So I think this one's issued long before now. Yeah, it would be treated the same way, though. They're basically synonymous.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I just want to confirm, is there anyone else in the audience that's either a business owner near mom and pops or a resident near mom and pops that wants to speak to this? Okay. So then it sounds to me like there's at least one clear direction of asking for more evidence and then talking to CAP and trying to get some of their history there. And we do want to bring that back.
But no, what I want to see, if you don't, if I might, is that we ask code enforcement, contacting the code enforcement
Yes.
as well,
Right.
outside of a badge, outside of any formal action, to go in and do their own analysis.
And then there was mention made of bringing back the SLUP and bringing it back when we have the license so that they're both back before us. Is that something that we're interested in doing, having both of those documents back before us?
Mr. Chair, I would say yes with the caveat of if they don't apply for the renewal, that we are pinged so we can consider whether or not we want to bring back the special land use permit separate from the renewal. If they're just kind of getting this like nebulous extension from AMCO, then I think we need to know that so we can make that, maybe that slight deviation from that plan.
I'm sorry, I must have missed that. How can they extend without renewal?
There could be some informal extensions.
Oh, okay, I missed that.
And I would offer that when you talk with code enforcement, let's put a 30-day bound on their look. That way, it's end of February, we'll, come what may, we'll have this information to complement this information. And then that ties with the time of their regular license renewal. And if it doesn't occur because of some technical measure on the state side, we can proceed in a reasonable time frame.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I'm recalling correctly, I think it was the Public Safety Committee had a hearing about this last summer, and Mr. Lee came in and made an appearance, and I remember specifically telling him that his liquor license was in jeopardy and he better get his act together. And so they can't in any way say that they were not warned that, he was in a serious situation.
One more question. What's the time frame of these proceedings? Like, are there special, especially on the special land use team, I know you said give you some time to review. Is there 21 days notice, 2 times that? What are the timeline?
Well, yes, and I think it's going to be difficult to try and time them so we address them at the same time, mostly because typically we have a new conditions permit or SLUP application, and we're a little more structured with that process. With an assembly request to modify or revoke a conditional use permit, special land use permit, that's not a process that we use very often, very rarely, in fact. And I'm not sure how well that timing would work in terms of also being forced at the same time as the protest applications. So it's really hard for me to predict the time. We do have the 21 days notice, but then we have some work to do to build up to have the communication request properly before the body, the evidence needs to support it and so forth.
So then maybe I might offer that we consider not waiting until a month, but talk to them in 2 weeks. Because if there's 21 days plus 14 days plus background development.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. Any other thoughts or comments? All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.